At St. Cloud State University, athletics are more than just games. They're an essential part of the Husky experience. From D1 hockey games to championship-winning wrestling, volleyball, and more, there's Husky pride in every corner of campus. Whether you're on the field, in the stands, or cheering from the student section, you're a part of something big. And the best part? SCSU is close to home, affordable, and packed with community that's got your back, in class and on the court. Come see what it means to be a Husky. Schedule your campus tour today at St. Cloud State University, the home of the Huskies.
For the Indians, one run on, let's see, one hit. That's all. We got one goddamn hit.
You can't say goddamn on the air.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
From the Gateway Lounge in Sioux Falls, it's Nobody's Listening Anyway. Here are your hosts, John Gaskins and Matt Zimmer.
Lion Eyes. Eagles song you hate, Eagles song you tolerate, Eagles song you like.
My favorite Eagles song.
Okay, I thought you said that not too long
I don't
ago.
really like the Eagles, but that's probably my favorite one.
This is the way we like to start Happy Hour with Matt Zimmer every now and then, is to whatever song is playing, whatever classic tune is playing here at the Gateway Lounge. Is it a Matt Zimmer? Why is Lion Eyes? I don't know why I ever ask you why you like or don't like a song anymore, because you never want to tell me.
It's because it's good.
Yeah.
Either your ears work or they don't.
Exactly. That's why I usually don't ask. By the way, just had a nice chat that we'll release tomorrow with your uncle, Kim Nelson.
I heard that, yeah.
A little update 1 year
coming
later.
back to Sioux Falls Christian, right?
Yeah, offensive coordinator, and all they did was win the state title last year with him as the OC. And what's crazy and interesting about it is he was saying some of the same stuff, but with good new detail, that Jared Smith, the head coach, was telling me right after they won the state championship, which is Kim was the OC and did call the plays most of the time, but Jared, as the guy who was the head coach who used to call the offensive plays, had veto power and sometimes just decided, I'm going to take over, and he took over in the state championship game in the fourth quarter, and they won. And so, real interesting to hear Kim talk. Imagine this guy, 43 years, all-time wins leader, South Dakota high school history. He coached in Edina in the Twin Cities at the highest level in Minnesota and had never been an assistant coach until the last couple of seasons, and having play-calling duties taken from you in the heat of a state championship game. And Kim was very shared a lot about that and what it was like for him and the whole experience. So he's, Kim, and then, as you know, and you can illuminate on this because he's a family member of yours. You've been to plenty of family functions with him. When we turn off the camera, we talk a little bit more. Boy, does the man love to talk about football.
Yep.
Like plays and strategies and telling stories, not only about games, but people he coached with, or this coaching clinic and that one.
One of his last years at Roosevelt, the schedule just kind of worked out that way that I covered most of Roosevelt's home games that year.
Yeah.
And that was when Freddie was still on his staff, so I guess I shouldn't say one of his very last years, but Freddie was his DC. I think Vince was on the staff, Vince Benedetto, so a bunch of guys that I knew. And
guys who would go on to win state championships as head coaches.
Yeah. After their games on Friday night, they'd go over to Kim's place and watch the film and have pizza and a few beers. And he invited me over a couple of times. And so I came over maybe 2 or 3 times that fall. I didn't even get there till like 11 because, the game gets over and however long it takes. And one of the nights that was there, I think I was at his house till like 4:30 in the morning. All the coaches had left. And it was just me and him talking about high school football, a lot about baseball because we're both. He, like me, is a huge baseball fan. Was a great baseball player. Yeah, and it was awesome. It just the two of us could sit. Not even yes, I'm his nephew, and I've known him since I was a little kid. But when we're hanging out, or I'm interviewing him, or we have whatever, our relationship is almost more. I don't want to say professional because we are family, but we talk kind of the same way I would talk with a Dan Jackson or a Kalen DeBoer or you, we just talk about, and because of the fact that we've not grown up together, but been related for my entire 46 years, and everything I know about his dad and his upbringing and the town he grew up in is the same town my parents grew up in. He's a Twins fan. He's a Vikings fan. I know everything he's done in his career. We just have so many shared experiences that we could probably talk about football or baseball or whatever for weeks on end without
Yeah.
running out of things to talk about.
Yeah.
You know?
He was telling Cordell and now I kind of wish we were just taping it because he's same guy on camera, off camera, just like talking about the big splits on the offensive line when he's spreading the offensive linemen out and talking about the benefits and how fun it is when it works when you split up the offensive linemen and how you can, like, he makes stuff that sounds like technically is kind of very boring and literally is inside football. But like the way he talks about it in a very, he's a very casual guy. He's not particularly animated or raises his voice, but it's actually fun to listen to.
He's different than most coaches in that he's not real uptight and doesn't take himself too seriously.
Yeah.
And he's not one of those guys who will pull well, you don't know anything about football. You couldn't possibly understand this because it's so complicated. He's kind of the opposite. He's more like, it's just football. It's not rocket surgery, to coin a phrase. I mean, he'll talk about just because you're a random idiot off the street, that doesn't mean you're wrong by saying you should have thrown the ball on 3rd and 19. It's always, whether we're having just casual conversations at his house about football or if I'm interviewing him after a game, how, like you said, he's able to kind of simplify it and talk about it in very layman's terms, sort of, He never got pissy with me for questioning him about stuff, partly because I'm not questioning him as if to say, like, you shouldn't have done that or that was a mistake, but just like I learned so much more from him as a reporter than I did as his own player because I asked better questions as a sports writer than, because it was my job. Yeah. And when you're a kid and you're playing for him, you're almost afraid to ask your coach too many questions, how much am I allowed to pull at this guy? It made me wish as a player that I had been more curious and asked him more questions because I could have learned so much. Wow. I learned so much more from him in all of these. Sometimes it'd just be a 3 or 4 minute conversation, but why'd you do this? Well, they were doing this, so we did it. Oh, okay. How come you've been doing this year? How come you moved towards that? Well, this is the kind of personnel we had, so we thought it would make more sense to do, and it just Kim, Curtis Riggs, Kalen DeBoer, there's other guys on the list. Brad Salem was one early in my career. Guys who I learned so much about football from just because they were willing to take the time to explain those things to me.
Partly because that's what they love doing.
Right.
They like spending their free time talking about what they do.
John Madden famously said that, a football coach should be a teacher. And John Madden was a school teacher before he became a football coach.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely something to that. The best football coaches are also really good football teachers.
Wasn't planning on telling a John Madden story, but it's related to what you were just saying. So apparently you've heard of Mad Dog, the crazy ass Mad Dog. He's on First Take every now and then from Mike and the Mad
Chris
Dog.
Russo,
Chris Russo.
Yeah.
He told a story recently on Dan Patrick about Super Bowl New Orleans 1989. And it was going to be the Niners and the Broncos. Joe Montana versus John Elway. And Russo was a young reporter, talk host, whatever. And he somehow was talking to Madden that week and about the game. And Madden was just like, tell you what, just come up to my hotel room and I'll put on some film. And I think Pat Summerall was there too, but whatever. And he said they just sat there and watched the film of both teams, and Madden was just telling him, the Niners are going to kill him. This is why. Think. That's funny. They just tore him to pieces.
55-10.
But that's what Madden wanted to do in his free time, stuff he would be doing in his study time anyway, because it's really fun. So check that out tomorrow. Kim Nelson. By the way, I kind of led that off with, he had play calling duties taken away, and then they won the state championship game. Jared Smith is very much of the feeling. I texted with Jared today just to clarify
some
this.
Context.
That great job of building relationships with players and coaches. It's a gift that he has. On top of that, he's obviously great with X's and O's. And looking at our personnel, coming up with formations that got our best guys on the field, getting the ball in the hands of our best players. And by the way, allowing Jared to be more of the head coach, more of the culture guy. So,
if you had, I think Kim is 70, 71. If you had told me when I was 16 and he was 40, he's still going to be doing this in his 70s, I would have said, yep. I bet he is.
And he
told me right now he was 71, I wouldn't believe
Cordell wouldn't believe you that he's 71.
Doesn't look a day over 50.
And he also did tell us in this conversation, and the one we did about his whole life last year, that he just can't not do it. He can't not do football.
No.
He can't not be coaching and having, especially this time of year with it getting going next week. So the high schools start practice next week. Colleges are now into week 2, and you have been around. You've now been to 2 Jacks practices, 1 USD, 1 Augie, 1 USF, but you just got back from SDSU practice. You just posted the story at SiouxFallsLive.com where all the great coverage on all these teams are. And boy, you ran into kind of a wild one today, huh?
It's funny, you have your own perceptions and you see things and evaluate them for yourself, but you're like, okay, I'm only here so much. I only know so much. Are my eyes deceiving me? Is this really what I think it is? So I'm watching it going, wow, like this really seems more intense than usual. But I want to make sure I'm not wrong. So the players come off the field, and I didn't even know if necessarily I was going to talk to anybody. I might have just gone up and taken some photos and shot some video and gone home. But after watching that, I was like, I want to talk to everybody, So the first guy I approached was Logan Green, the defensive captain, defensive tackle. And I go, Logan, I've been doing this for a long time, and that's the most intense practice I've seen. And he was like, yeah, you're not
okay.
Wrong. That was pretty chippy. And the next person I talked to was Quentin Christensen, who's pretty much the leader of this football team, and said basically the same thing to him. And he's like, yeah, it is. And I made it clear to both of them. I'm not saying that's bad that I came away from this going, oh geez, this is a bad thing. But they were both like, yeah, we want to get after it. And it wasn't just that there were little scuffles, because there were like 3 or 4, where 2 guys kind of keep going after the whistle. Next thing you know, they're throwing punches and guys are pulling them off each other. That, I would say, on average happened less than once per practice under Stig, and probably Jimmy too. And I think there were 3 or 4 of them just today. And, none of them were ugly or anyone had to be thrown off the field or put in timeout or anything like that. Just, guys go a little bit too long after the whistle and there's some pushing and shoving, they pull them apart, it's fine. When that would happen under Stig, I mentioned this in my story, he would make them on the spot do up-downs,
Yeah. Little burpees.
Yep. And then after practice was over, when they'd all be gathered around, he'd go through his laundry list of things he needed to talk about. We're going to make sure you're doing this, talk to the trainer, get your grades. And then he'd go, John Gaskins, Matt Zimmer, you 2 got in a fight, get up here. And so those 2 guys would come up to the front of the thing, and he'd make them hug. And that would be their, sort of his way of, and it worked. That was what everyone knew. That was his sort of spiel or whatever. And it worked. And I asked Dan today, I said, so you going to do that? And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Because I don't think Stig really liked it. Like, he didn't punish guys for it, but I don't think he really saw a lot of value in it. Yeah. Whereas Dan today was like, yeah, a little bit of that is good.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just that guys were being chippy and pushing and shoving and going a little bit past the whistle or whatever. It was the trash talk, and it was the way they were celebrating a big play. The defense in particular, I was standing on that side of the field, and I'm standing right next to Logan Green and Joe Ullman and Cullen McShane, and they're on the field doing their thing, but then they come off and the 2s go on there, and they're kind of coaching those guys and trying to encourage them. And younger guys are making big plays. They're getting to the quarterback. They're winning their rep. They're beating their guy. And they were just loud in how they were celebrating that. And not only celebrating them, but taunting the guy who got beat, And then there was some sort of, oh, that's a cheap shot. Are you kidding me with that? Get that shit out of here. Kind of going back and forth.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching all of that, and I'm going, boy, this seems pretty pushing the envelope a little bit. But again, is my perception the same, the right one? Well, then Dan's talking to the team after practice is over, and he's like, guys, that last session was awesome. I loved the intensity. I love that you guys are able to talk trash without making it personal, kind of go up to the line but not over it. But then he goes, we do maybe have to dial it back a little bit. We can't have, we got to find out where that line is and make sure we're going right up to it but not crossing it. So I think that tells you that I was right. If Dan felt he had the need to say, okay, this is great, but let's make sure we're not going too far, that goes to show you they were pushing the envelope.
It's
there.
about right where they want it.
About as far as they can go.
Yeah. Well, maybe times are changing. Even in the 10 years you've been on the SDSU beat, or 20 plus years now covering colleges, perhaps things are...
They definitely are. We were talking about this before we went on camera about, and I don't mean to harp on this detail because to some people it doesn't mean anything and other people get all uptight about it, but just the amount of cursing you hear on the football field that you didn't used to. There were a lot of coaches that like Bob Young, certainly there's no cursing on the field, and Stig didn't like it. I'll never forget this one time. I don't know if Stig had a hard, fast, no cursing rule, but he never cursed, and the coaches only did it to so much. Jimmy was probably the one who broke that rule the most.
Imagine that.
Yeah, but I remember one time I show up for practice at the S-Jack indoors, and a young player, I think he was like a freshman defensive back, he's right in front. I just happened to be standing right there, and Stig is standing right there, and the guy is running, he's trying to cover someone, and either he like dropped a sure interception or just got beat or something or whatever, and the play ends and the ball's rolling away, and the guy just goes, fuck, F word, right there. And I don't think if I was standing there, Stig would have said anything, but because I was standing right there, and the guy said it like into my ear, like John went over and put his hand on the guy. He's like, do not do that. Like, we're better than that. And I almost wanted to say to like, it's okay. Like, I'm not offended. You don't have to.
I'm not going to report that.
Right. You don't have to punish the kid for me. But Stig was very much like, we don't do that. He didn't. And then as soon as Jimmy came in, it was like, okay, that rule's gone. we don't have that rule anymore. And it's clearly the same under Dan. But even, I was at Augie and USF yesterday. Their coaches and players aren't afraid to get after each other. It's just the way they motivate each other, it's just the culture we live in, I guess. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I get annoyed when people get annoyed by that. Like, why do you have to swear? Like, because we're all adults. Relax.
Yeah.
But it is a different one of the things you see, and it was really, like I said, I'm kind of paging my mind today. Like, when was the last time I saw a practice where they got after it to this degree, and it felt afterwards like these two sides had just gone to war, kind of. I don't remember one quite like this.
We could go off on a swearing tangent, which I'll take a slight one. I think it goes beyond football, and I don't know about the times if people cuss a lot more than they used to, or kids do at a younger age, but I do remember when I was in my teens and 20s, me and my friends, whenever we were just together, we're not around adults, we're not in school situations, job situations, you love to toss around the F-bomb here and there, just fun, just to stick your chest out, make a point. And then you get a little older. I remember I was working a serving job. It was at Olive Garden, and there's a lady who was about our age. She was in her 20s, but she was just more mature than most of us. And she's just like, it's not really necessary. You're losing the meaning of it when you're doing it. It's not impressing. It's not impressing the girls. Certainly, she just got fed up at me and a couple other guys at one point doing this. She's like, it's not that cool. It's not as cool as you think it is to do it all the time.
Well, and players can tell. Players want sincerity.
Yes.
They want authenticity.
Yeah.
And if you're out there, whether you're cursing or not, if you're out there trying to be this caricature of a football coach, this drill sergeant, that you think that's what 80s movies, that's how they portrayed football coaches, as these militaristic drill sergeant guys, and some of them were back in the day.
Sure.
Certainly, those coaches did exist, but in the year 2026, they really don't. There's still guys that yell and scream. I made a note of it in my column today. Logan McCormick, the D-line coach, he's the one on this staff that you can hear him no matter where he is. Yeah. And yes, he'll drop an F-bomb here and there. He'll get after his guys. But he's positive about it, for one thing. Yeah. He's not just breaking his guys down. Yeah. And for another thing, he's being himself. He just graduated from NDSU like 5 years ago. He was a stud defensive end for the Bison. Now he's coaching for his rivals. And that is just off the field. He's a pretty mild-mannered, soft-spoken guy. He was just on my most recent Jax chat. But on the field, he's intense. And we talked about that on my Jax chat interview. I kind of alluded to the fact that you're pretty intense in practice.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, last year everybody's new. You're still learning these guys. You're still trying to teach these guys. He's like, I actually had to dial it back a little bit because you don't want to scare them off. You're just meeting these guys. But he's like, now I know them, and they know me. And he's like, so I'm not holding back anymore.
There you go.
And you can see that, and you can hear that. But we were talking today about how intense practice was, and specifically how the O-line and D-line got after each other. And Quentin Christensen, the Jack's offensive tackle, without me even unprompted, I didn't bring it. He was just like, Coach McCormick is so awesome. The way he's like, he coaches those guys hard. And he's like, and I love that. He's like, I love that he's going to have. Well, he can because he's sincere. That's who he is.
Yeah.
He's not just out there trying to, look at me, I can say the F word really loud, or I can be scary because I'm 6'4", 260.
Yeah.
Like, that's who he is. And so the kids buy into it. If it was fake, if that wasn't him, if he was putting on an act and swearing just to swear and be heard, those kids would tune out and Dan would find a new defensive line coach.
It's really fascinating how some of these coaches are just the same person, like Kim Nelson in person, as they might be a lot of the times coaching. Doesn't raise his voice much, mild-mannered. He does not like...
Kim raised his voice when I played for him.
Okay. A little more intense in practice. But you know what I mean? Some of them have a quick valve. A valve where it's...
Yeah.
And I just remember there was in Worthington at the community college and he was a legend. His name was Mike Fury. He was the coach, the women's basketball coach there forever. And small town. So when you'd see him out at the golf course, if you happen to be having cocktails with him, just so laid back, so nice, coolest guy in the room without even trying. And just like this all the time. And then you'd walk into a game he was coaching. His head is red. His eyebrows are pointing. He's a volcano the whole game. The whole game. And that's, to me, one of the fun things about watching coaches.
I wonder if sometimes that does be something that, like, if you can change over the course of your career, or if it's just who you are. If it depends, like sometimes you hear about coaches mellowing as they get older, or mellowing if they have a less stressful job. People ask me a lot about Stig and what he was like because he's got this Ned Flanders personality, sort of, But it's funny. My very first year covering the Jacks beat football was 2015. So Stig would have been like not even 60 yet, late 50s probably, still a little bit younger. And they hadn't built the S-Jack yet. Football stadium was still Coughlin alumni, so they practiced in that grass field where the soccer field is going to go.
Okay.
And I show up there one day for a practice, and even I could tell, like, this doesn't feel like a good practice. Like, it was just kind of dead. And about 5 or 6 periods in, Stig blows his whistle, and it's one of those long, like, he just lays into the whistle for a long time. So he's kind of letting everyone know, like, this is an emergency, stop what you're doing. Everyone comes in, and Stig just started screaming at him. And this is ridiculous, and what are you out here? And he goes, you guys stand on the field. And he said something, he used the word grab ass. He goes, look, you're standing around playing grab ass. And it's my first year covering the team, so I'm like, okay, this is nothing special. And there's a buddy of mine who had played for the Jacks just a couple years prior, and he had told me how, like, Stig doesn't really do that. Stig never swears, this kind of thing. Well, so I texted him, and I go, Stig just pulled the guys aside and yelled at him and said they got to stop playing grab ass. And the guy texts me back. He goes, no, he didn't. You're lying. I'm like, what do you mean I'm lying? I just heard it. He's like, he would never do that. I was like, he just did it. And I was like, I'm not making this shit up. But it was funny because so then that was my first year on the beat, and I covered them, till the end of his career. And I'm obviously not at every practice. Maybe that thing happened many other times and I didn't see it. But I never saw that again. Just that one time. That was the only time I saw him really, veins bulging, gesturing, that he was genuinely angry, getting after his guys. So did he just mellow as he got older? Was it, hey, we're better now, and this doesn't happen anymore? I don't know, but that was the only time I ever saw Stig do anything like that.
Well, maybe. No, my guess is he didn't do it a whole lot before that, but when he ever does something like that, it means something.
Sure. I bet it got their attention.
Yes,
yeah.
And I've made the comparison before, but it sounds career arc and time at the school. Tom Osborne, same thing. You hear it meant something when he raised his voice, when he yelled, and if he ever cursed.
Well, you and I both, we interview coaches so much. And especially in football and basketball, when it comes to the whole halftime thing, the halftime speech. Oh, did you yell at him at halftime? Because, you go to either halftime adjustments or you're losing 28-0 at halftime. What did you say to him? Because, again, we've seen all these movies where the coach goes in and throws the chalk against the wall and screams and hollers and throws his hat. And what do coaches always tell us? They go, that never happens. We don't do that. That's not productive. You go in there and you say, we're screwing up. How can we fix this? What do we got to do better? All that kind of stuff. But there have been times where I've had, just last year when the Jacks were getting beat 35-0 or whatever at halftime against Illinois State, we asked Dan, like, what do you even say when you're playing that bad? Do you scream at him? Do you make a joke about it? Whatever. And it's kind of like, no. But Dan, he was like, I waited to kind of read the room.
Yeah.
Like, what was their body language? How did they, and then I reacted. Because I've had conversations with coaches, usually off the record. They're more careful about what they want to say. We'll be like, I thought about it. Or, and I've said before sometimes, like, well, maybe you should have. Maybe you should have got after their ass. It's 35-7. You're getting outgained 300-50. You got 10 first-half penalties. Maybe get in there and throw something against the wall. Get their attention. So, I don't know. I think that sometimes those things, we think it's never happening, and it happens a little bit.
I think it does.
Or people think it happens all the time, and it really doesn't.
Or maybe they're saying it doesn't happen, or it didn't happen, or that's overrated. But every now and then, it does happen every now and then. I'm convinced of that. But everything you just told me, and maybe Cordell can find this clip, but the necessary roughness.
Yeah.
Necessary roughness toward the end when the head coach is in the hospital and the crazy old defensive
Wally
coordinator.
Pippendorf or whatever.
Wally is the
played by Robert Loggia.
acting head coach, and he's wearing the shirt and tie because that's the buttoned-up head coach wanted his staff to wear shirts and ties, and they come in at halftime. They're getting their ass kicked. Now, let's analyze what's not working for us.
No, he goes, what's working for us?
What's working?
Not a goddamn thing's working for us.
Takes the tie off, throws it around, and then and then just proceeds to scream for a minute. And it's the classic speech. Yeah, you rip their head off and you bleep down their bleeping neck. Yeah,
And that's the way you're gonna do it. You go out there, you tear their heads off, and you down their necks. Let us pray.
there you go. It's great. So and that's like the one that I think about because he's actually trying to do the practical thing at the moment, and then he just whips himself into a frenzy.
We're already talking about Kim, and we're talking about halftime speeches and everything. I've told this story before, but I don't know if I've told it publicly, so I'll go ahead and do it. When I was a sophomore or junior, we were playing Brandon in the state playoffs, and Brandon was the number one team in the state. They're like 8-0.
You're at Washington.
And we're at Washington, and we were like 4-5 or something, and so Brandon was hugely favored to win. But we did have an awesome quarterback named Chris Quayle, who ended up going to SDSU. And I don't remember if it was before the game or at halftime, but Kim's talking to us, and he's animated but measured. He's not, and then all of a sudden, he just takes it to another gear and starts screaming. And he had actual chalk, and he turns around and whips the chalk at the chalkboard, and it breaks in half. And I was a scrub. I wasn't in the game anyway, so I was only kind of half paying attention. And I remember when the chalk hit the board, like going like this and looking around and seeing that half the team did the exact same thing that I did. They're like, Jesus.
Yeah. Like in a movie.
Yeah.
The cutaway of the whole team. Ah.
Yeah. And he's like, I could tell you what he said, but I won't.
Yeah.
But I just remember being like, whoa. And it fucking worked. Because we went out and we upset Brandon, the number one team in the state. Like, I think we beat him pretty soundly, 37-20 or something. And so don't ever let anyone tell you that never works or that never happens because we responded to that. Like and it wasn't even necessarily that he was really being positive about it. I mean, he was he probably did that a few other times that I don't for whatever reason that one really stands out in my memory like, wow, that was pretty good, Kimmer. Way to go.
I think it happens more often than they lead us on to believe that it happens. But back to Jack's practice because I feel like we're channeling Allen Iverson here. We're talking about practice, but you mentioned some of these little scrums or whatever hanging on after the whistle. One of them, it appeared, and you got it, you captured it, was the incoming D2 transfer Sitzman pass rusher and Quentin Christensen, which that had to have been a fun matchup to watch.
That was just going a drill where they were going head-to-head.
Yeah.
And that whole session, I got some more footage of that. I probably should have uploaded more, but I told Quentin after practice, I was like, that was, worth the price of admission type stuff. Like, they were going after it. You got Quentin Christensen's an all-conference left tackle.
Yeah.
Sitzman was a D2 stud at Wayne State. He clearly is going to be an impact player at this level too. And I don't know if you saw yesterday at practice, I think it was yesterday, Sitzman was beating up on Ja'Shawn Thomas, a transfer from Duluth, who's, I think, a redshirt freshman or a sophomore, kind of a rookie. Felt a little bad for him. There was Tanner posted some stuff online of the kid beating him. I think it was just a bad day for Jayshon. He's going to be fine. But you see Sitzman just killing this kid. And it's like, okay, well, let's see how he does against, the All-American, the senior star left tackle. And you saw in that clip, I mean, that kind of is like a Godzilla versus King Kong. You know, they were, it was, and I'm standing right there, like 3 feet away. And it was funny, Quentin said to me later, he goes, I saw you standing there with your phone. And I was like, oh, great. Zimmer's going to film me trying to block. Sitzman is like, so maybe I inspired him a little bit to be on his best. But
I know. Do you think these guys turn up a little bit when they see you around, especially if you're
No, I don't think
filming?
so. But Quentin did say, he's like, I saw you. I was like, ugh, okay. And so it helped him anyway. But that whole drill, it was the heavyweights against the heavyweights. And it was a long period. Yeah. They really got after it. I mean, we've talked so much about how the Jacks D-line kind of took a step back last year. They didn't have the depth. There was a lot of injuries. There just weren't as many dudes. They were still pretty good. They gave up like 22 points a game, like 3. We talked about this. Numbers that most teams would be perfectly happy with. The Jacks were not. That D-line looks so good right now because they're so much deeper. You bring in some impact dudes like a Carter Sitzman. And this, Reese Kirschman comes back. He was hurt last year. I mean, they're talking about going 10, 12 deep, whereas last year it was 4 or 5, And the offensive line, Kenyon Bigbo's out again. I don't know how long he's going to be out, so he wasn't there today. But Will Papke looks really good. Caden Hotz is getting I think that's the right name. There's so many guys that have almost identical names. I get them mixed up all the time. He's getting some reps at center, so I don't know if that means Shane Willenbring's going to move to guard. But Shane Willenbring's one of the strongest players in the country. Benches like 400 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, and we saw Kyan Rauk a little bit at right tackle. Without Kenyon Bigbo, John Pika's getting some reps there. Jackson Kirsten, I think, is the other guy. So all of a sudden, usually you go to practice like, oh, let's go watch Chase Mason throw bombs. Today it was watching those guys. It was like animals in a cage getting after it. It was fun to be there.
See?
It was fun to watch.
This is why you go. But since you did watch a little Chase Mason and the other quarterbacks, you did make one tweet of a throw or two. What can you tell us what's going on? You saw today?
Chase looks really good. He looks really good. He looks smoother than last year, and he looked smooth last year. But, I mean, he's just so – and I've said this before. He's just so cool. It just looks like everything moves so slow for him. He never looks rattled. He never looks hurried. He never seems I've said before, he doesn't seem impressed with himself. He's like, I made that throw. That's what I do. I'm Chase Mason. The only thing I'll say, the only negative is he still throws a wild pitch once in a while. Every few throws, like, where was that?
Yeah.
He still does that once in a while. And I don't think that's something that the Jacks necessarily have to worry about being a problem for them to accomplish their goals this year. He's going to be fine. I think that's the thing he's got to tighten the screws on a little bit if he's going to get drafted, because that's how high the standard is to be an NFL quarterback to get drafted is you can't throw a wild pitch. There can't be one where you throw it 10 yards over a guy's head and it gets intercepted. They got to be all good, every one of them. And I think he can get there. I mean, he's a baseball guy. He's got the tools, the arm strength, everything. They have a drill where they put like a basket in the corner of the end zone. It's maybe the size of this table, half the size of this table. And the quarterbacks are trying to throw the ball into this basket from 20, 25 yards away. He dropped like 9 out of 10, and the other guys are like 5 out of 10, I mean, they're right there. It'll like bounce off or hit right in, but I mean, Chase is just boop, 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 boop. And the guy who was second best was Josh Holst, the transfer from Northern Illinois. He looked really good today. I kind of assumed that because of the fact that Jack Henry started 3 games last year that he would be QB2, and he still might. Dan made it very clear that job is open and that competition is ongoing. And maybe it is Jack's to lose because of the experience, but it's Josh Holst is coming on. He's going to make that really hard. He's going to make it hard for them to not put him in that. And again, that's nothing against Jackson. He looks great too, but they've got 3 really good quarterbacks.
Are running backs sorting out at all?
I wouldn't say they're sorting out. I think they all look pretty good.
Okay.
McKinney looked good today. I just really love him coming out of the backfield. He's short. He's small. He's not an Isaiah Davis. He's not a Julius Lawfridge. I'll have another one. Yeah. I just don't know, if he can he carry the ball 20 times a game. He's going to take some punishment. And he ran for 1,000 yards last year, but that was in Division II. And even then, I don't think he was averaging 20 carries a game. But you got a Corey Blair, you got Josiah Johnson, you got James Basinger. Dan has said a few times he'd like it to be kind of a committee sort of thing. Now, I don't think that means you go into a game and say, okay, McKinney gets his 7 carries, and then Johnson gets his 7 carries, and then so down the line. I think you kind of see how it goes, ride the hot hand, so to speak. But then they have guys who can do different things. Brendan Begeman could be a short yardage sort of back. McKinney had 35 catches for Northeastern State last year. He can come out of the backfield and catch passes. So, no, it's not sorting itself out, but I don't think it's a position that they need to worry about. They're in pretty good shape there.